Max here again for another Whiteboard Wednesday. Today I want to talk about why velocity slows down when your team gets larger. Unfortunately, a lot of managers, a lot of developers still believe that you add another person to a project, your growth or your velocity that you can get things done increases at a linear rate. I mean, it makes sense. But like the old adage says, 9 women do not make a baby in a month. And the reason is, or I should say, what does this chart look like before I get into that, is really it's kind of like this, or it kind of slowly plateaus off. And don't get me wrong, adding people will increase your velocity. However, it comes at a number of different costs. So why does this occur? Why does this look like this and not linear, or even maybe in an upward, maybe logarithmic or exponential curve? Well, there's a couple of reasons, really. Number one, which I've talked about before, I believe in a Whiteboard Wednesday, called effective communication channels, and I think even in that one I even had the math to support this. But number one is communication cost. So if I have 2 people, I just have that communication. If I have 3, now I've added that number of communication channels. 4, you can see how the chart or the graph is starting now to really get pretty busy. And again, I apologize, but the math is something like n times n minus 1 over 2, or something of that nature, where you do have this ever-increasing communication cost as your team grows. So that's number one, communication cost. All right. That might be at the very top of the camera, so I apologize. The second is process cost, meaning I have all these other people now. What is my ever-increasing cost to run my process? I mean, so if we put under here process cost, how long, or the time that it actually physically takes to do, like, for example, stand-ups, code reviews. And I'm not going to, go too far into this, but there's a lot of things in our process that we take into, that we may take for granted when we have small teams. But when we have larger teams, in order to run our process correctly, it's going to cost a lot more. For another great example is estimation meetings. If you have an estimation meeting with 2 guys, it's going to be about as quick as it can be. If you have an estimation meeting with 15 guys, that could be drug out to be an entire day or afternoon. So and then on top of that, let me even go into the whole kind of man hours thing. If you have 2 guys, each with 40-hour man weeks, that makes 80-hour man hours a week, right? Again, that same estimation meeting takes 1 hour times 2 people. That to run your process was 2 man hours. That same estimation meeting, now I have 15 guys. Well, let's do 10 guys for easy math, right? 10 guys is 400 man hours, but now 10 guys times 2 hours is 20 hours. But like I said, that estimation meeting could easily go to be 4 hours. Now it's 40 man hours to do that process. Process cost increases as the number of people increase. The third, which should also be obvious, is technical debt. And what I mean by technical debt, the term is not new, and I perhaps have mentioned it on my blog before, but I've never written a real definition. This is what my idea of technical debt is. But the point is that the more people you get on the project, obviously the more code that's going to be created. And in that code, there's going to be things that we don't like, or that there's going to be things that need to be reworked. Even if the code is absolutely perfect, we have the ever-growing, I don't want to say it's technical debt, but we have the ever-growing responsibility to maintain what we've built. I can't put in feature X and let bug A and B slip in. But you could technically lump that into technical debt, that we have a larger project base now. We have to not break things when we build things. So as a result, development is going to be a lot slower. We're going to have a lot more code being created. A percentage of that is going to be technical debt that needs to be reworked. Yada, yada, yada. I don't mean to fluff there, but the point is that we don't have like no longer like a feature A is going to take, it took us this long at the beginning when we were a greenfield project. We should have the exact same velocity, if not quicker, now that we have more people. And that's just a fallacy that people don't always understand. So here are 3 real reasons why your velocity will actually slow down as your project continues on and as you add people to your project. So just be aware, this is something that a lot of people do when they're calculating out their velocities and whatnot, is that let's hypothetically say that we have a chart, a velocity chart that shows us how much we can actually get done per iteration. And so it looks something like this, where, you know, iteration 1, let's say here's 20, 40, and 60 points, or whatever our estimation mechanism is. Iteration 1 is 20, 22, 20, kind of trending down here. We add a person and the velocity goes up. We add a person, velocity goes up again. Now we're kind of trending up here. All right. We kind of have a trend line that kind of looks something like that. Now, we're greenfield, blah, blah, blah. Let's continue this out. I gotta erase some of the whiteboard though. But let's say that right at that end, we release. We go from, you know, internal beta conception to actually pushing it live. Now where we have to have data integrity, we just can't do things like willy-nilly blow away tables. You know, we have to do ETLs and things of that nature. What previously was an uptrending velocity up by 40, now actually might go down this way. It might kind of show some trend like this. Unfortunately, managers don't like to see that trend. They go, well, what happened to my previous velocity? So just be cognizant. So they tend to make arguments that say, well, you know what? We had less people at the beginning of the project, so let's not count that because that's not our true velocity or whatnot. I only want to pay attention to this part up here where we were upswinging before we did the beta release. That's about our real true velocity. That's actually a false velocity. That's probably the most inaccurate time to actually be looking at your velocity. And you should be really looking at these downward trends and saying, okay, why is this occurring? Always be asking, why is this occurring? And take corrective measures to either accommodate for the slower velocity, not necessarily by adding people, but also to realign expectations and responsibilities within your development team to say, all right, this is now our true velocity because of the cost of maintenance. So, I don't know, it's kind of long-winded. I apologize, I maybe went off even on some tangents, but hopefully it was helpful. Yeah!